let's face it, there's nothing quite like the ongoing new requirements. Well, sometimes they're not new. Sometimes the client thought we knew about them already, but not being telepathic, either one of us. We probably are just discovering it. So, what are you going to do to protect your team when new requirements seem to be stretching things a little bit? And why is it so important for you sometimes to say no in the nicest possible way? Last but not least, what is the communications plan around new requirements? Yes, the communications plan. So, anytime you've been on any kind of project work for any period of time, you have discovered that one of the greatest challenges that you're going to run into that are not communications and not risk management are new requirements. Funny thing though, after spending a fair amount of time studying forensically change management logs, some of my partners and I have found the most interesting thing, and that is that at least half of the changes that were recorded were not considered changes by the person who requested the change. It's more of a clarification. They finally figured out that since you're not telepathic and they're not telepathic, apparently what they thought you knew, but they had never actually said out loud, was nowhere to be found in any requirements document, in any kind of correspondence about expectations. So, a couple of things. One of the biggest things that you can do, hit number one, to protect your team is to try to coax those little nasty preconceived notions of instant communication out by constantly inviting conversation for clarification. There's nothing wrong with clarification. And on the subject of communications, we're big fans of something here called clear definition, which means we also want you to make sure that you take into consideration the context. After all, the term a majority of users will find it easier to use means one thing in an organization of about 200 people, all of whom are relatively sophisticated in their use of technology, and a completely different thing in an organization of 5,000, where the levels of sophistication with technology use vary widely. So nail it down, get a little more specific. There's a tried and true tool for writing any kind of requirement that tells you whether or not it might be a good idea to go get more information. The best protection for your team is to address this issue head on. Many of these have reached the point of must haves in the mind of your client or your sponsor, or sometimes both. So you're not going to have all that much choice about negotiating it as a presence. What you can maybe do is negotiate its level of priority and the impact that it may have on time and money estimates. But that's only if you've gone to the trouble of digging them out to begin with. This is one of those cases where the best defense is a good offense. Also, remember that what we're doing is a matter of change management. So make sure that you have something that designates any kind of change that's logged in the change log as a previously undiscovered feature or a previously inarticulated expectation. This gives us a bit of a baseline so that we can have a sense of what it is that we could have found out just a little bit earlier And so maybe it wouldn't have been such a heavy shock. Just like so much else, iterative processes are great. And there are some times when the expectation is we know everything about this project. We've done it 100 times, a million times before. We're going to use a predictive policy. Either way, there is one overriding truism. The sooner you know, the better it is for everyone on your team. But most particularly for the good folks who are going to have to now execute on that. By the way, it's not a bad idea to also record how much of an impact this particular request is going to have on the amount of effort being expended and the amount of money that it's going to require. Availability is one of those really tough topics in project management. It's a very tough topic in any kind of management because availability is very, very difficult to assess, estimate, or track. Along the way, part of your leadership in a project team environment is to make sure that you help your teams manage their availability in an enlightened and humane way. A fellow professional in the project management community, David Vincenti, and I recently had a chat. And one of the things that we both found valuable as we were going through the stages of development in our professions were the leaders who took the time to help us remember how important it was to make sure that we took care of ourselves, not just the team, not just the project, and not just the client, but to make sure that we took care of ourselves so that we'd be in a better position to take care of, well, everything else. And that remains true. But as a leader, that also is one of the hidden responsibilities. People don't articulate it. And in the rush to meet a schedule, sometimes it's very, very difficult. But of course, that's why you're a leader, because you're willing to face the challenge of some of those difficult conversations. And ultimately, that's going to be for the good of everybody involved. Then, last but certainly not least, how are you going to handle the communications around the changes that are going to be implemented? How are you going to handle the communications around the changes that are approved for implementation and that are essentially going to have an impact on the schedule, on the budget, on people's workloads, and in some cases, on people's patience? And yes, you should have an idea of how you're going to communicate it because the person who's going to do the work isn't the only person who needs to know about the additional work and about the potentially additional deliverable. Remember the interdependencies of everyone on this project, their work, and how all of them mesh together is an important part of what you, as a project leader, are responsible for assuring is smooth and that communication is going both ways into that web of interdependency. Also, give thought to what this means to any other project or any other part of the workload that the particular individuals who are now involved in this might have to consider. Fair enough? So, just to recap, as we said at the beginning, you're going to need to figure out how you're going to protect your teams from requirements that are suddenly discovered. You're going to need to really address how that impacts the team and what you need to do in terms of priority. And then, last but not least, make sure that you have a sense of how the communications have to be handled because it probably involves a broader, wider number of people in your stakeholder community than you might realize at first. And let's face it, our relationships with those stakeholders are all part of the enlightened triple constraints because the strengths of those relationships, the levels of trust in those relationships, are part of what makes you a very strong project leader. And as strong as you get as a project leader, the stronger you are as a project manager. This is what's going to differentiate you from other people in the field, how you apply your leadership, and how you continue to grow it. In a leadership driven project management academy, that's what we're all about. I'm KimiKSP. Thanks for watching, and I hope that if you find anything useful in any of our videos, you pass them along to friends. Like or subscribe. We would love to have you on a regular basis. And if you have an idea about a topic you'd really like to see us dig into, by the way, you may have noticed we do about 4 videos per topic. Let us know. It might be on our list, but it might not. And if it is on our list already, we'll just kind of move it up on the priority. Thanks again for watching. See you soon.